The most secure network in the company was the first one they broke. According to IBM's Cost of a Data Breach report, the average company takes 204 days to even realize it has been compromised. This is the story of a breach that lasted 6 months, and the trail of digital fingerprints that eventually led federal investigators straight to the person responsible. There was no broken window, no forced door, just a login that looked completely ordinary. It was a Tuesday morning, and nothing about it felt different. 3 floors down, in a server room lined with blinking rack lights, a system quietly approved an access request it had approved 1,000 times before. But this request had not come from inside the building. It had been routed through 4 different countries, specifically to make sure no one could trace it back. For the next 204 days, it would sit inside the network, watching, learning the rhythm of the entire company before making a single move. The first warning sign came 11 days in. A single failed login, flagged by the system, then dismissed as routine human error. That one dismissal is the exact moment this entire case pivots on, because it wasn't an error. It was a test to see if anyone inside the company was paying attention. Nobody was. By day 40, the intruder no longer needed to guess. They had mapped every server, every set of credentials, every blind spot the security team didn't know it had. And by day 189, 15 days before anyone noticed a thing was wrong, they finally found exactly what they had been looking for. What that file contained is the reason this breach became one of the most costly in corporate history. But to understand why, we have to go back to the moment it all began. 6 months earlier, before any of this had a name, a junior IT administrator approved a routine software update. It was the kind of task performed thousands of times a day in offices around the world, completely unremarkable. Think of a company's network not as a wall, but as a house with hundreds of doors. Most companies focus on locking the front door. This attacker didn't need the front door. He found a window left open in a room nobody remembered existed. That window was a third-party vendor plugin, a small piece of software the company didn't even build themselves, buried inside a much larger system. Security researchers call this a supply chain attack. Instead of breaking into the castle, you compromise the blacksmith who forges the castle's keys. Once inside, the intruder didn't touch a single file, not yet. For weeks, he did nothing but observe, mapping which employees had access to what, memorizing login patterns, learning exactly when the security team was least attentive. This is what forensic analysts later called living off the land, using tools already inside the network so that nothing foreign ever needed to be installed, nothing a virus scanner could ever flag. It's worth sitting with that for a moment. Every scan came back clean. Every alert stayed silent. The system wasn't failing. It was working exactly as designed, and that was the problem. The first real anomaly wasn't caught by software at all. It was caught by a forensic analyst named Nothing in this story, because her name was never released, who noticed a server pinging out to an IP address at 3 a.m. every single night, for no operational reason. She flagged it as a ghost server, a machine that technically existed on the network, but that nobody on the team could explain, account for, or remember provisioning. When digital forensics teams finally traced that IP address, it didn't lead to a person. It led to a chain of compromised routers spanning 4 continents, each one a dead end deliberately built to protect whoever was really at the other side. This is the part of the story where most companies would still have had time to stop what was coming. They didn't take it. Because 3 days after that ghost server was flagged, before anyone could fully investigate, the entire security team's access credentials stopped working all at once. Something inside that network had just realized it was being watched. For 3 days, the security team worked in the dark, locked out of their own systems, watching their network operate without them. And then, without warning, access came back. Every credential worked again, as if nothing had happened. That should have felt like a victory. It wasn't, because whoever had locked them out hadn't been repairing anything. They had been finishing something. When the forensic team finally reconstructed the full timeline, they found something that didn't match the profile of a lone hacker at all. The access patterns were too disciplined, too methodical, operating in precise 8-hour shifts across different time zones. This wasn't one person in a hoodie in a basement. This was a team operating with the structure of a business. Because, in every practical sense, that's exactly what it was. Investigators would later trace elements of the intrusion toolkit to a group cybersecurity researchers had been quietly tracking for over a year. An organization believed to have breached at least 11 other companies using nearly identical methods. 11 companies, most of which never publicly disclosed that they had been compromised at all. And here is the detail that turned this from a cybercrime case into a legal nightmare. Because the servers used to launch the final stage of the attack were physically located in a country with no extradition agreement and no meaningful cybercrime enforcement cooperation at all, even if investigators identified every person responsible, by name, by face, by fingerprint, there was almost nothing that could legally be done to bring any of them to trial. But identity was never really the point of this story. Containment was. Because when analysts finally got access to what had been taken, they realized the breach hadn't just exposed employee records or financial documents. It had exposed the underlying source code and security architecture for systems used by dozens of the company's own clients, effectively handing a blueprint for future breaches to whoever wanted it. That data was never recovered. It was never publicly confirmed as deleted. As of the most recent forensic report available, it is officially classified as unaccounted for, which raises the question nobody inside that company or any of its clients has ever fully answered publicly. If this data is still out there, whose systems is it sitting inside of right now, waiting to be used again? Today, the company still operates. Its name is still on the building, still on the paychecks, still on the reassuring press release that called this a contained incident with no significant impact on customers. No one was ever formally charged. No arrests were made. The organization believed to be responsible is, as of this recording, still active, still operating, and by most estimates, still selecting its next target. The 11 other known victims quietly upgraded their security architecture, paid their forensic consultants, and moved on, the way institutions almost always do, treating catastrophe as a line item rather than a warning. But here is what should keep you up at night. This entire breach, 6 months of quiet infiltration, 11 confirmed victims, a blueprint for future attacks still unaccounted for, began with a single approved update, clicked by someone who was simply doing their job. We tend to imagine cybercrime as something distant, something that happens to corporations, to governments, to people with something worth stealing. But every device in your home right now is running software written by someone you've never met, approved by processes you'll never see, sitting quietly on a network you assume is closed. The window doesn't have to be forced open. Most of the time, we already left it unlocked and simply forgot it was ever there. If you want to understand how a single line of code once reached beyond a network entirely and shut down power for an entire nation, that investigation is waiting for you next. Somewhere, right now, a system is logging an access request it has approved 1,000 times before.